Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining us because we are diving into a truly fascinating piece of history today. Let's just jump right in, shall we? We're going to examine a really compelling story from early Islamic history. Honestly, it starts off sounding almost like a mystery novel, but it unfolds into this profound lesson on character, ethics, and the completely unseen consequences of our everyday actions. It centers around a devoted companion of the Prophet Muhammad, a man named Abu Dujanah. Now, Abu Dujanah exhibited a very unusual, almost baffling daily routine. It's a story about a tree, a neighbor, and a level of personal integrity that is, well, it's honestly kind of hard to wrap our modern minds around. So let's unpack exactly what was going on here.
To really understand this story, we have to set the daily scene. Abu Dujanah was known as a highly dedicated companion, and he had a strict habit of praying the Fajr prayer, that's the early dawn prayer, right behind the Prophet Muhammad. Now normally, after this specific prayer, the congregation would sit together, they'd reflect, and they'd offer supplications. But Abu Dujanah, he did something completely different. The very moment the prayer concluded, he would immediately get up and just vanish. Actually, vanish isn't even the right word. He would literally sprint out of the mosque as fast as he could. And day after day, this exact same pattern repeated. You can imagine the intense curiosity this sparked, right? I mean, in a community where lingering after the dawn prayer was totally the norm, bolting for the door the second it ended was definitely going to catch some attention, and it for sure caught the attention of the Prophet.
Because of this recurring, hurried exit, the Prophet Muhammad eventually approached Abu Dujanah to just ask him directly about it. And the question he posed really gets right to the heart of the matter. He asked him, "Do you not have a need from God? Why not wait to conclude the prayer?" In other words, why are you skipping this time that's traditionally used to ask God for your needs and desires? Why the immense rush every single morning? It's such a gentle but probing question. The Prophet is essentially asking, what in the world could possibly be so urgent that it literally pulls you away from this deeply spiritual moment? Well, the answer Abu Dujanah gives is exactly what transforms this from a quirky story about a rushed morning routine into an absolutely striking example of moral integrity.
All right, moving into Section 1, the neighbor's tree and hungry children.
So this is where Abu Dujanah lays out the physical reality of his living situation, setting the stage for what is honestly a massive ethical dilemma. He explained to the Prophet that the layout of his property was, well, a bit complicated. You see, he had a Jewish neighbor who owned a really large palm tree. The issue was that the branches of this specific tree extended way over the property line and hung directly into Abu Dujanah's own garden. So whenever the wind blew during the night, ripe dates from his neighbor's tree would get knocked loose and fall right into Abu Dujanah's yard. Now, on the surface, this sounds like a pretty minor landscaping issue, right? Just a few fallen dates, no big deal. But for a man of Abu Dujanah's strict convictions, especially when combined with his family's circumstances, those fallen dates represented a daily, high-stakes moral test.
And this highlights an unbelievable tension. On one hand, you have a really harsh reality. Abu Dujanah had very hungry children at home. If you're a parent, you already know that the urge to feed your kids is arguably the most powerful human instinct there is. But on the other hand, we have Abu Dujanah's profound, unshakable fear of letting his family consume anything that was unlawful or haram. Those dates in his yard, they didn't belong to him, they belonged to his neighbor. The tension here is immense. Abu Dujanah wasn't rushing home to start his workday or to catch a few more hours of sleep. He was rushing out of the mosque at dawn for a highly specific, desperate rescue mission. He literally had to beat his own waking, hungry children to the yard.
He had to get there first to collect every single fallen date and return them to his neighbor before his kids could eat them. And the reasoning he gave to the Prophet? It's absolutely staggering in its accountability. He said, "I fear standing before God as a thief." Just pause and think about the weight of that statement for a second. We are talking about fruit that naturally blew into his own yard off a branch overhanging his own property. In a lot of modern legal systems, you could easily argue finders keepers, or at least chalk it up to a natural accident. But his internal moral compass was so finely tuned, so incredibly sensitive to the boundary of what wasn't rightfully his, that he viewed even a single mistakenly eaten date as a literal act of theft against his neighbor and a sin before God.
Okay, Section 2, Abu Bakr's intervention.
So, what happens when a private act of such extreme integrity finally comes to light? Well, in this specific community, it triggered an immediate and massive chain reaction of generosity. While Abu Dujanah was explaining this daily struggle to the Prophet, another really prominent companion, Abu Bakr, just happened to overhear the conversation. And Abu Bakr, he doesn't just offer sympathy or a pat on the back. He takes immediate, decisive action. Step 1, he hears the very real plight of a father agonizing over his hungry children and his strict moral boundaries. Step 2. Without even a second of hesitation, Abu Bakr goes directly to that Jewish neighbor and simply buys the palm tree. He uses his own personal financial resources to solve the problem right at its root. And step 3. He turns right around and gifts the entire tree to Abu Dujanah and his children. Just like that, the dates were no longer unlawful, they fully belonged to Abu Dujanah's family. It's this breathtaking act of brotherhood and financial intervention that instantly relieves Abu Dujanah of that grueling daily burden.
Let's move to section 3, a neighbor transformed. But wait, because the story doesn't end with a happy family simply eating dates. The most profound impact of Abu Dujanah's honesty actually landed on someone entirely outside their immediate faith circle, and this just brilliantly illustrates the ripple effect of genuine integrity. You see, the Jewish neighbor didn't just sell a tree and walk away. He soon discovered the entirely incredible true story behind exactly why that tree was purchased in the first place. He learned that his neighbor, Abu Dujanah, had been frantically rushing home every single morning, literally depriving his own hungry children of fallen fruit, simply to ensure that he didn't unlawfully take from his neighbor's wealth. The neighbor was completely overwhelmed by this discovery. Seeing this unparalleled level of honesty, this raw character, and then the subsequent beautiful generosity of Abu Bakr, it deeply moved him. It moved him so much, in fact, that it inspired a monumental personal transformation, and he declared his conversion to Islam right then and there. He was won over not by some heated debate, but by the undeniable, living proof of their ethical conduct.
Which brings us to section 4, a timeless lesson in halal and haram.
We really need to look at what this historical event tells us about the core values of this entire community. The crucial point here is how this story perfectly encapsulates the concepts of halal, meaning the lawful, and haram, the unlawful. The source material emphasizes that this whole sequence of events reflects the intense, unwavering dedication the Prophet's companions had regarding these boundaries. Because, we often think of lawful and unlawful in terms of grand, sweeping actions, right? Like major crimes or massive financial fraud. But for Abu Dujanah, that boundary was as thin as the skin of a single date blown by the wind into his own yard. It shows us a community that heavily guarded their actions in the absolute smallest of daily matters. They knew that true character isn't just built in the major public moments. It's forged in the quiet, unseen, everyday choices we all make.
And I want to leave you with this final, lingering thought to consider. If the ethical handling of a single fallen date was powerful enough to completely change a neighbor's life and faith, what impact do our daily financial choices, our honesty in the smallest transactions, and our integrity at work have on the people watching us? The ripple effect of honesty is absolutely boundless, and it very often starts exactly where we least expect it. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today. I highly encourage you to keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep learning. Catch you next time.